What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Add a Zero Challenge. Can we take a $10,000 bankroll, turn it into $100,000 playing live poker? We're going to see it all on this channel. Starting off on episode 10, our bankroll has not been on the greatest trend. We're starting up with $8,186 today. 8186 is the starting bankroll. It's been challenging. The first 9 episodes did not go how I had hoped they would go. But all we can do is battle it out. That's all I know how to do is play poker. I think I'm playing okay poker. Some unlucky hands for sure. Some crazy, crazy plays. So let's see if today goes better. Starting up the session here. Immediately we have 1,600 in buy-ins. So I've lost some money early in sort of small pots. And kicking off, we have a 2-5-10 straddle going on. We look down at ace of diamonds, jack of spades. After seat 9 makes it 35. We 3-bet to 90. Now, seat 9 is the villain from last episode that folded middle set to the river raise. So what does that mean for me? Well, that means they're capable of making big folds against us. And that means I'm going to be aggressive. So we 3-bet. We 3-bet the ace jack and put pressure on our opponent with our sort of decent hand, but not a great hand to play multi-way. They call, and flop comes king 8-5 with 2 hearts. They check. We're going to bet 110 on this board that has some flush draws. They're going to hit the king X sometimes. They're probably going to 4-bet with ace king. Occasionally they would call. But we have an ace in our hand. It's not a super consideration. So I think king queen, king jack, king 10, king 9. All these sort of hands are possible. 9s, 10s, jacks are possible. And then a bunch of air balls, ace X suited, whatever. Small pairs, 8, 9 suited. But jams. So we start with a bet. And they call. Turn is the 4 of clubs. They check. I bet 275 here. I'm going to decide to continue betting. It's really hard to bet enough on the turn in these spots. It's really easy to underbet the turn on these sort of boards. Because what sort of bluffs are you going to have, right? A queen jack and a queen 10 and a queen 9 and a jack 10 and a jack 9 and a 10-9 suited. If we have these hands and we 3-bet them pre-flop, we can continue with those. But the ace jack is, at this point, when they continue past the flop, is losing, right? We're not beating any hands unless they have a lower heart draw, but other than that, we're losing. So we can turn that hand into a bluff and put a lot of pressure on, and we do have a lot of value hands to balance this with. Ace king and king queen and king jack and 8s and 5s and aces, etc. So we bet again, 6-7 suited, only half the time though. We bet 275. Now, the important part of this hand is my opponent tanks for a long time and calls, but they actually give off this idea that they're not sure what to do. And it's not a Hollywood. It's about 2 minutes where they are really unsure if they're going to call or fold on the turn. And so it's that's something you can do on the river when there's no action left. But on the turn, they've turned their hand face up to they definitely don't have a set. And they definitely don't have king queen plus, right? They have a bluff catcher. Just based on their behavior in the hand, essentially. And I was very sure it wasn't an act. So that's what we're dealing with. And our opponent folded middle set on the river. So I'm thinking going to the river here that we're going to jam unless it's an 8, basically. Unless it's an 8, we're going all in this spot because they have a bluff catcher. And I know they can make big folds. So we're going to pull off the triple barrel here with ace jack. My opponent thinks for quite a long time and decides to fold. He says at the end he had 7s, I think. And he also said he has a read on me. So we'll see. We'll see in the future if he does have a read on me. Incorrect read this time, but correct read last time. So we're 50-50 so far. And we've made some money bluffing. On to the next hand. So we look down at king queen here, and we're going to raise it up to 30 in the straddle pot under the gun. This is, for what it's worth, a wide open in a full ring table. King queen offsuit, 9-handed, depending on the rake environment, etc. But we do go for the open, get a call on the button, and a call in C1. We go to a flop of ace 8-5. and I decide to bet 60 here. Now, I think this is a good play typically. You can bet on these boards in multi-way pots if you know your opponent's ranges are wide. I know that the button is wide. We played with them the other day. They're a very aggressive and creative player. And seat 1 Graham as well is going to complete a lot in the straddle. So he's going to have a range that has a ton of non-ace X hands. So basically, I think most of the time I am up against 2 pretty wide ranges, and I can just bet and rely on fold equity and take it down here. So I bet 60 with our king queen. It's definitely an aggressive play. And the button calls. I do get a sense that the button is thinking about folding a little bit. We'll talk about that more later in the hand, but they give off the sense that they're thinking about folding, and they call. Turns an ace. All right, what do people have? Check, check, check. River is a queen. Interesting. Do we have the best hand here? We check to the button, who bets 375 pretty quickly. First of all, I think that pretty quickly bet. I should think about that a little bit. This is a creative player. This is the player that check raised with the flush the other day. Triple check flushed. Check raised and had the flush. And then here, they go for the bet at 375 in the river, and we have a bluff catcher. We have a bluff catcher against a creative opponent. The 6-7, 6-9, 7-9 clubs all missed. But it's such an easy value bet with an ace X as well. So we're just kind of in no man's land in terms of like, do we call? I wouldn't consider it against most people, but against this opponent, I think we do. You know, they've shown, maybe not on these videos, but they've shown some really large river bluffs before. So I don't know what to do here. Shows the goods. We can't really see it, but I think has an ace of some kind and gets a value bid in there. So disappointing. We lose 375 there, making, again, what feels like a hero call on the river. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I'm totally getting owned by C7. Something worth noting in this hand that I'm taking into the future as well is that my opponent gave out the vibes of they're not sure if they're going to call or fold on the flop, and it was a hand like ace jack or ace 10, right? So I think this opponent is certainly capable of manipulating their tells to try and give off a alternative story. That's a takeaway from this hand that I'll be able to use into the future, and that I can't really rely on the demeanor that they're giving off, because I think it is deceptive. It's good to know. You know, for a lot of people it isn't. It's just like honest. But for this opponent, I don't think it is. So good to know. On to the next hand, but I wish we had more money. I think I have the coolest piece of poker software you've ever seen today. It is called HybridPoker. Brand new piece of poker learning software where you test your score against myself, against Daniel Negreanu, against Bill Perkins, and see how you score against the three of us, as well as other poker players as well. But HybridPoker learns about you, the player, this is really cool. As HybridPoker gets to know you, it's going to tell you what to work on. There's a link to the IQ test down below. Try it for free. I think you'll like it. So try it out. We have 1,600 in buy-ins. We're in the straddle. Raise to 30 in the cutoff. Call with seat 9. Same opponent in the cutoff. Same opponent in seat 9. The two villains of the session. We look down at Jack 5 suited, and we're going to call as well. Flop is a beautiful Queen 6-4. We have 3 to a straight, and we have a flush draw here. Our opponent bets 55, and we get a call from seat 9 as well, 3 ways. So it's an interesting spot here. Do we want to raise or do we want to call? Usually in these 3-way spots, when it goes bet call, you enter raise mode. But it also, that what's going to play into this is how deep is our stack? Because do we want to stack off with the jack high flush draw? We're going to get a lot of money in the pot there. So sometimes it can get a little jammy where the stacks are just in the wrong range where we want to call. I'm assuming I raise here. Let's see what I do. We raise it up to 185. Pretty small raise. 55 call to 185. It's giving a pretty good price. C7 calls. And seat 9 calls very quickly. I'm not liking this setup, right? The fact that seat 9 overcalls, I'm thinking that they can also have a flush draw. And by the way, there's king high and ace high flush draws out there, which is really not great. But it can also have a queen X, and then seat 7 can have a queen X, can also have a flush draw, can have sets, can have a bunch of stuff. So We're not liking this setup going into the turn. Turn's a jack, so we turn a pair. Is it the best hand? Not super likely. It's possible. It's not super likely. Should we continue bluffing here? And I thought about, hey, do I want to try and bluff a queen by going all in on this jack? You know, I pick up equity against a queen, but I decided to check instead, realize some showdown value, and think that there's going to be some better hands to bluff than jack 5. It actually checks through. River is the 9 of diamonds. This is a brick. Doesn't complete any flushes, doesn't complete any straights. It doesn't really complete any 2 pairs, like queen 9 or 6-9 or 4-9. It's not a thing. And our opponent bets 375 on the river. We're in the same spot against the same opponent. We're in the same spot against the same opponent. What the heck did we do, man? So, you know, hindsight 2020, spoilers, I want to fold. But again, the issue, I think, is if our opponent is capable of bluffing, they're going to have the ace-high hearts and the king-high hearts, and they're going to have some middling pairs. I think a hand that really makes sense here is 9s. So I like the other call with king-queen a little bit better with this one than this one, because I think 9s make sense. I think our opponent can check a king-queen and an ace-queen on the turn and then go for value on the river here. Even a queen-10 when we check again, I think can make some sense. And yes, we're going to be some bluffs. We're going to be some 7-8 suiteds. You know, I think in our opponent's range, they will have hands like 5-7 suited for what it's worth. They play a pretty wide range pre-flop. But yeah, I think we should probably find the fold here with the jack 5 of hearts. It's painful. It certainly can win against some opponents, but I think we're making a bit of a jump here to assume that our opponents are bluffing enough of the time to make this hero call with the turn showdown value. So yeah, I think I should fold here. I end up making the call. King Queen makes the value bet, and we lose with the jack 5 again. Once again, losing more pots on the river. I think we can get away from this. I think this one's a little bit too wide, especially having the 5 of hearts in our hand, you know, blocking the straight draws and the flush draws. But moving on, we're in for 2,200. We look down at pocket 9s. All hope is not lost. Stay tuned for this episode. We're going to raise it up to 60 in the double straddle pot from the small blind. We had a call in the straddle, and it raised to 200. This is a very, very awkward pot. I remember this pot now. I raised to 200 from Yuri. Now, we're sitting 800 deep, right? It's a double straddle pot. We're 40 blinds deep. It goes bet, call, raise. We are at tournament stacks already, the 210. So the question is, pre-flop, what do we do with 9s, right? Like, what do we do here? We're very uncomfortable out of position. If you look at, like, tournament charts in the spot, for example, you're often going to have hands that go all in, like your big pairs, right? But you're not often going to, like, jam 5s here, right? You're going to have a range of pairs that call. And, like, yes, you're in very uncomfortable spots on flops where it's just like you're kind of in no man's land with a tough hand. But if you go all in, you're not going to profit against a continuing range. But your hand has far too much equity to fold. So with our 9s here, I think the correct play is to call, right? This is small blind against double straddle. Both opponents are good, aggressive opponents. I think going all in is going to lose money. And I think folding is making a mistake. So I decide to call. But you got to think, we have $800 in our stack. We're calling here. And C3 is going to call. Or C4, excuse me. We've got $600 in the middle. We've got a pot size bet left. So we are very, very short. And that contributes to this hand being quite weird, I think. Flop comes down. 10-6 deuce. Very dry. Very empty. I'm thinking I had the best hand sometimes here, for sure. I think that the likelihood of C4 not 3-betting pre-flop with jacks, queens, kings, aces is close to 0. Especially against us. We have a dynamic. We're friends. What's up? Man, how's it going? I assume you're watching this. So jacks through aces are 3-betting pre. They don't have overpairs here. Yuri, C5, can certainly have those overpairs, but like we're feeling pretty good on this flop. This is a great flop for 9s, and we're probably going broke at this point with a pot size bet. Unless it goes bet call or something, then, you know, I think we're getting all the money in here. But it checks through. This is great news, right? This is really good for us. Turn is the 5 of hearts. Okay. Awesome, you know, two flush draws out there. We have a pot size bet left. How do we want to play our nines? So we can just shove, but I bet 230 here, right? If it goes, I bet 230 and it goes call, we can probably get away from our hand somehow. Or if someone sort of like raises and the other person calls or something like that. So I bet 230 instead of just jamming on the street. And maybe jam is a little bit better. We do allow them to realize their flush draws for cheap. But it's not a disaster anyways. Remember, we've got a pot size bet. So we bet 230. And we get a call from seat 4. So there's now 1,100 in the pot. And we've got 375 left. So we've got 1/3 pot going to the river. This is very much a tournament situation. And river is a brick. It's an 8 of spades. So 7-9's not in the range. Set of 8's possible. So what do we do here? We've got 375 and there's 1,100 in the middle. Well, in theory, I think we bet actually with our 9s because our opponent, who doesn't have jacks through aces, and you know, remember it's a raise to 65, a call, a squeeze, a call. Doesn't have that many 10s either, for what it's worth. Doesn't have the offsuit 10 combos here, you would think. So what do we do with our 9s? 375, 1,100 in the middle. Well, we don't fold. That's the point. But if we check, we kind of allow their bluff catchers to show down for free. We don't get any money from them. And they're going to be getting, remember, 4-1 on the river. They need us to be bluffing 20% of the time to bluff catch. So with a 6, in theory, they need to call. Right? Like that's the thing. They don't have very many 6s, etc. But that's the deal. So I decided to bet here. And it looks bad, I think, because it's like a very mergy bet where it's like, okay, we're betting the middle of our range. But just because the stacks are so short, we allow them to play perfectly when we check, I think. We're going to have to check call. So if we go for the check call, we induce no bluffs. And we allow them to get away for free with their bluff catchers and then just value with their value hands. You know, I don't think we could check fold the river, getting 3-1, knowing that they don't have jacks plus, basically. And knowing that both flush draws missed. So yeah, we go for the bet in this very jammy spot. I believe it's 360, I think. So a little bit less than 1/3 the pot. Ace says Cooler City shows the ace 10. And fair enough. Ace 10 suited, like, totally makes sense. The way that he played his hand. We should lose to ace 10. It's just a pre-flop spot, really. Which is like, we've got 600 in the middle. We've got 600 back. Check at the flop. Board's dry. We feel good. But we're going back to the backpack. 3,000 in buy-ins, dude. This is a terrible, terrible day. Or is it? Stay tuned. The day is not over. Looking down at the king 7 of hearts. We raise this up to 30. This is a hand that you can raise to 30 in 6 max. In 8 max, it's very wide. So for this to be true, we need the game to be good and splashy. We get a call in seat 3. Call in seat 7. Call in seat 8. Call in seat 9. Call in seat 1. 6 ways to the flop with king 7 of hearts. Queen, deuce, 10 with 2 hearts. This is a great flop for king 7 of hearts. 6 ways. We do have to be a little bit worried about the ace-high flush draw, but like, given we're only 800 deep, and there's 180 in the middle already, like, we like our hand. Bet 85. I actually didn't know this player was in the pot, so we're 7 ways. They bet 85 in a very multi-way pot. Back to us. We're going to call. We actually go heads up. From 7 ways down to heads up. Turn comes the 8 of clubs. Not a very good turn. We don't pick up any equity here. And it goes check, check. River is the ace. What do we do here with our king 7 of hearts? We got a bluff. What bluffs do we have? That's my question, right? Like, our opponent's a good opponent, a thinking opponent. They're capable of folding. Good. Okay, so we might want to bluff our opponent. What sort of hands can we bluff here that raise pre-flop, and check call the flop. Well, we have Queen X and 10X, right? Those sort of hands could bluff. We could bluff a 10 if we wanted to. But it's probably better to bluff king high than a 10 for what it's worth. We have missed heart draws, but the ace high hearts just made a pair of aces. The king high heart that we have, but we had to raise a pre, right? So king 7 of hearts, king 9 of hearts. King jack makes it straight. And we had the jack high hearts, but that raised pre, we only have jack 9 of hearts. That's it. So we only have one missed flush draw that raised in this position. We have king 9 of hearts. We also have 6, 7 of hearts, right? We could turn 7, 8 of hearts into a bluff. We could turn 8, 9 of hearts into a bluff. We could turn 9, 10 of hearts into a bluff. But what I'm trying to get at here is finding the best bluffs in a spot where you should have bluffs against opponents is difficult to do. And king 7 of hearts is actually the best bluff here. I think it's the best one. Next to maybe, that's it. Yeah, it's the best bluff. Like 8, 9. Maybe 8, 9 suited. If it decides to check call the flop, 8, 9 of spades is a pretty good one. But we hardly have any bluffs. Now, how many value bets do we have? A lot, right? We have a lot of hands that can value bet. So we need to bluff in this spot. You got to find it. We find it. And thankfully, I'm against a good opponent that makes a big fold because he recognizes the same thing, right? Like it's hard to bluff. It's hard to have bluffs here. So don't try that against Joe Schmo that can't hand read. But, you know, this game today, we've got a bunch of good opponents in it. Moving on to the next hand. We look down at pocket sixes. Get a raise to 35 in the straddle plot from seat 9. Get a call on seat 1. Call from B in the cutoff. As you can see, the game is pretty action here. Like, it's a pretty good game, even though we are stuck heaps in for 3,000. A call in the big blind. We are 6 ways. 5 ways to the flop for 35 apiece. Flop comes down 8, 6, 3. This is our savior. We've hit the middle set in a 5-way pot. We bet 100. Multi-way. Just over half pot. And we go 3 ways to the turn. Turn is the absolutely scary 9 of diamonds. I really thought the good card came on the turn. It didn't. I forgot. This is a scary card. We get a lead here. Looks like for 215. Lead for 215 and a call. With our set, I think it's very clear. We need to call here. We are probably drawing to a full house at this point. Probably up against a flush, but we have the right odds to draw to our big hand, and we have some implied odds as well. And sometimes we have the best hand. So we call for 215 and then play the tough river. And we're against the creative C7 again. River's the 9 of spades. C7 bets 200. This is a block bet, right? There is 600, 900. There's about 1,100 in the pot. They bet 1/5 a pot. We get a call from seat 1, Graham. Now, I'm thinking in my head, is it possible for our opponents to have 8s full? Yeah. But are they going to bet 200 on the river? No. Are they just going to call the bet of 200 on the river? No. So we've got the nuts here, right? We've got the best hand. How do we get the most money? Well, with our stack, I'm eyeballing it here. It looks like we have about 900 left. It's all in. C7 says he knew it. He knew it. And he folds. He told us after it was the king high flush that he bet. I think he played his hand fine. Bets the king high flush, block on the river, and folds. And Graham thinks for a long time and calls, has the nut flush, has the ace high flush. And we win a massive pot within like 30 minutes at the end of the day. And that's the last hand of the session. But that pot was huge. I ended up cashing out in the session for $29.05. 3,000 in buy-ins. $2,905 in cashes. $29.05. So we lost $95 on the day. One of the worst live sessions I've ever had. I think a pretty bad river call there with the Jack 5. The rest is whatever. Has turned into a $95 loss. That feels like a win. After playing that many hours, it feels like a victory. I hope you all enjoyed the session. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I think at this point is when I was kind of thinking, okay, I need to make some adjustments. in this game, in that I'm playing a pretty wide range. I'm playing a wider range than is correct theoretically in every spot, assuming that I have an edge, you know. I think I need to tighten that range up a little bit, in that my opponents are scrappy. They're battling, and therefore it's not working as well as I would hope. So I need to just have a slightly stronger range and make some tight folds pre-flop, but that's fine. We'll do that. And that's it for episode 10. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm actually going to go in real time right now in real life to Playground to play another episode. So I hope to see you all for that. Subscribe wherever you're watching this. Thanks for watching. Until next time, we'll see you later. Goodbye.